Hello students, let us learn the first chapter of your political science textbook today, the Indian Constitution. Now before we start learning about the Indian Constitution, let us understand why there is a need to study Constitution or why countries need to frame constitutions. Let us learn it from some examples. If you talk about a game, let us say if you talk about football, and if I play football by hand, will it be okay? No, it won't be because the rules of the game explain that if you catch the ball by hand, it will be considered as a foul. Similarly, if you are going to school, you have to be there in the school uniform, and if you are writing exam, you have to answer only those questions that have been asked in the question paper given to you. You cannot take any question and write the answer that you know. You won't score any mark if you do that. So those have been certain rules that have been defined for certain things. And similarly, for a country which is as big as India or any other country in the world, there is a need for the rules to be formulated, and the people should follow these rules for a peaceful social life. Once these rules are framed in a country, we can either write those rules or we can just take them as oral rules. If we write those, that written document is called the Constitution. So what basically a constitution does is it explains us what is right and what is wrong in that particular country's context and time. It helps us understand what we should do or shouldn't do in that country. It tells us what are the things that we must follow in that particular country. Now there are two statements that we have to keep in our mind. These statements are very important. All democratic nations have a constitution. But all nations which have a constitution are not democratic. There could be some nations which have a constitution, but they may not be democratic. But all the democratic nations of the world definitely will have a constitution. This is something a key point or key aspect that most of the students get confused about. So be very particular about these two statements. All democratic nations have a constitution, but all nations that have a constitution are not democratic. There are several purposes that a constitution serves. Let us find out about them in this part. First, it tells us what the fundamental nature of that society is. A constitution helps serve as a set of rules and principles that all people in that country agree upon as the basis of the way in which they want the country to be governed. Let us understand that from the example of our neighboring country, Nepal. Till recent times, Nepal was a monarchy. It was governed or ruled by a monarch or a king. However, later on there was a people's struggle in 1990. That struggle established democracy and it lasted for 12 years until 2002. In October 2002, King Gyanendra began taking over different aspects of the government with the help of the army. Finally, Gyanendra became the king of Nepal in 2005. But in November 2005, the Maoists joined other political parties and demanded restoration of democracy in Nepal. There was another protest against the king in 2005. The people protested against the king, and finally in 2006, Gyanendra agreed to step down as the king and he asked the political parties to form a government there. And in 2008, Nepal became a democracy again after abolishing monarchy. The second important purpose of a constitution is to define the nature of a country's political system. For example, Nepal's earlier constitution stated that it was a monarchy, which was ruled by King Gyanendra and his council of ministers. But later, the people's representatives began to rule the country, and then its political system changed into a democracy. Now let us see what happens in a democracy. The people elect their leaders in a democracy, and these leaders represent the people on their behalf. But it's always possible that these representatives might misuse their authority. But the Constitution provides protection against this misuse of power by the elected representatives. Another important function that a constitution plays in a democracy is to ensure that a dominant group does not use its power against other less powerful people or groups in that country. For example, in the class, if there is a majority of boys and a few girls, that's a minority, and the teacher decides to work around what the majority boys they say, that would be a kind of unfair treatment of the girls. Because the interest of the minorities, here the girls, will not be considered. They'll be unhappy or dissatisfied in the class. Similarly, such situations can occur in a democratic society as well, where a majority can continuously enforce decisions that go against the interest of the minorities. So, it is very important to check that the dominant group or the majority group is not using their power against the minority group in a society or in a democratic society. In democratic countries, the constitution checks the domination of one religious group on the other religious group or a caste dominating another caste in that country. Protecting the minority and their rights again becomes a very important thing in a society or in a democratic society. And whatever decisions are taken should be acceptable for the entire people of that country. The constitution usually contains rules that ensure that minorities are not excluded from anything that is available to the majority. The other significant reason why we need a constitution is to save us from ourselves. What is that? Saving us from ourselves. At times, we might take decisions over an issue that might go against our larger interest. Example like observing all these corruptions in the democratic setup or democratic country, some people might think that it is better to have a dictator's rule. But in the long run, we will understand that it was a foolish thought and was wrong. Because we have a lot of examples of dictators' rule, like the rule of Hitler in Germany and the rule of Mussolini in Italy, all these. So, Constitution saves us from ourselves making a wrong decision. Because when we take a decision in a democracy, it should be completely based on the Constitution. And when we make a wrong decision, the Constitution will be checking or stopping that decision. Now let us find out what are the key features of the Indian Constitution. During the freedom struggle, the nationalists or the freedom fighters had devoted a great deal of their time to imagining and planning what a free India would be like. Under the British rule, Indians had very little role or no role in the making of rules. They just had to obey or follow the rules that were made by the British. So the Indians or the Indian nationalists, they were convinced that free India should be a democracy in which everyone should be treated equally and be allowed to participate in government and the decision making. Indians were united under one feeling that there should be a free country which is ruled by Indians according to the rules set by Indians for Indians, not the rules that are framed by outsiders. And those rules had to be accepted and obeyed by every Indian irrespective of their caste, religion, region, gender, language or any other social identity. The makers of the Constitution or the Constituent Assembly felt that everyone in the country should have an equal representation, even the minorities should have a representation in the decision making. All these were kept in the mind of the constitution makers when they drafted a constitution for India. And that's why we have a constitution which is accepted by everyone in our country. The preparations for drafting a constitution started long time back in 1934, but it gained momentum in 1946. And it took 3 years to draft a constitution for India. More than 300 experienced leaders from different fields, from different parts of our country gathered together to draft the constitution. Taking ideas from different parts of the world, they drafted our constitution. These people or the Constituent Assembly finally drafted our constitution in November 1949 and it came into being in January 1950. Now find out who was the chairman of the drafting committee. Now let us find out the key features of the Indian Constitution. They are listed here: federalism, parliamentary form of government, separation of powers, fundamental rights, and secularism. Let us start with federalism. What is federalism? This refers to the existence of more than one level of government in the country. You know that India is a vast country. It is not easy to govern the country from one single point. So, in India, we have 3 levels of government. One at the center, the other at the state level, and the third is the Panchayati Raj or the local self-government. The makers of the constitution were very much aware of the size of our country. So, they thought that If the people sitting in the capital city of New Delhi make rules for everyone in the country, there will be sharp oppositions against that. That's why a second level of government was added. It is the state government. The state governments could make rules for themselves independently. The constitution contains three lists that detail the issues that each level of government can make laws on. They are union list, state list, and concurrent list. About these three you will study in your higher classes. Remember one thing, in the federal system, the states are not merely under the control of the central government. They draw their authority from the constitution as well. As I told you earlier, there is a third level of government, that is the local self-government or the Panchayati Raj. Now let us see the second feature of the Indian constitution, parliamentary form of government. What is this parliamentary form of government? I told you there are three levels of government. All these three levels of government consist of representatives who are elected by the people. The Constitution of India guarantees universal adult suffrage for all its citizens. What is this universal adult suffrage? It is the right to vote. It is the right to vote to elect a representative. We found that under the British rule, Indians did not have any role in decision making. The constitution makers felt that every citizen of India should have equal right in electing their representatives, irrespective of their religion, caste, color, region, language, or economic standard. This means that the people of India have a direct role in electing their representatives. Also, every citizen of the country, irrespective of his or her background, can contest in the election. Now let us learn about the third feature of the Indian Constitution, separation of powers. According to the Constitution, there are three organs of the government. These are the legislature, the executive, and the judiciary. The power of governing the country does not rest in one single person or one group of people. It is divided into three organs: legislature, executive, and judiciary. Legislature refers to all the elected representatives. They make the law in our country. And the second is the executive. The executive is a small group of people who are responsible for implementing laws and running the government. And the third one is judiciary. It is a system of courts which interpret and apply the law. In order to prevent the misuse of power by any one branch of the government, the Constitution says that each of these organs should exercise different powers. Each organ acts as a check on the other organs, and this ensures the balance of power among all these three organs. Now let us find out about the fourth feature of Indian Constitution, fundamental rights. There are 6 fundamental rights in the Indian Constitution. They are right to equality, right to freedom, right against exploitation, right to freedom of religion, educational and cultural rights, and right to constitutional remedies. Let's learn about these 6 fundamental rights in detail. Let's start with right to equality. Right to equality assures that every Indian citizen is equal before law. All the people are equally protected by the Indian law. They can't be discriminated on the basis of their caste, sex, or religion. They can access to public places equally and would get equal opportunity of employment. It strictly condemns the practice of untouchability. The second one is right to freedom. It includes the right to freedom of expression and speech, the right to live in any region of India, the right to move freely, the right to form association, and the right to practice any profession or any business in the country. The third one is right against exploitation. The Indian Constitution guarantees human dignity and protects people from any exploitation. According to the Constitution, it is illegal to employ children who are less than 14 years in age. Forced labor or trading of humans is also illegal in our country. The fourth fundamental right is right to freedom of religion. All the citizens have been guaranteed religious freedom in our country. They are free to practice, propagate, and profess any religion of their choice. And the fifth fundamental right is educational and cultural rights. Our constitution states that all the religious or linguistic minorities have the right to set up educational institutions as they want to develop and preserve their respective cultures. The sixth and the last fundamental right is right to constitutional remedies. According to this rule, a citizen has the right to move a court if she believes that a particular state has violated her rights. This section of the fundamental rights of the Constitution has often been referred to as the heart and soul of the Indian Constitution, or the conscience of the Indian Constitution. These fundamental rights protect citizens against arbitrary and absolute exercise of power by the state. The Constitution thus guarantees the rights of individuals against the state as well as against other individuals. Let us find out what Ambedkar has said about these fundamental rights. The object of fundamental rights is twofold. The first object is that every citizen must be in a position to claim those rights. And secondly, these rights must be binding upon every authority that has got the power to make laws. That's all about the fundamental rights. Now let us move on to the fifth feature of the Indian Constitution, that is secularism. What does secularism mean? It means the separation of religion from state. A secular state is one in which the state does not officially promote any one religion as the state religion. Our country is neutral in the matter of religion. Every citizen is free to follow his own faith. Our country, India, became a secular state in 1976 with the 42nd Amendment of the Indian Constitution. With this, India doesn't have any official state religion. The laws of the country work in several ways to prevent religious domination in our country. From all what we learned from this chapter, it is clear that the history of a country has a very important role in the kind of constitution that country adopts. Indian Constitution has been amended many times over the years to make it acceptable to the changing society. Often, a major change in the constitution means a change in the fundamental nature of the country. We found the example of Nepal. Nepal changed from monarchy to democracy because there was a fundamental change in the society. That's why it changed from monarchy to democracy. That's all about the chapter. Now read the chapter, The Indian Constitution, in your political science textbook. There is some extra information given in the chapter. Read them as well and make as many one-word questions and answers as possible. Then send those to my WhatsApp number before 4 p.m. today. Thank you for watching.